Today in Capechi's Corner, we're going to look at solving quadratic equations by factoring. So let's review some vocabulary. So when we say GCF, that's a greatest common factor. It's the largest polynomial that can be factored from each term. Factored form is when we write the polynomial as a product of two or more factors. And today we're going to look at the zero product property. So when we multiply two things or three things and the result equals to zero, then one of those variables, or we're going to look at binomials, must be equal to zero. All right, some steps when we're solving a quadratic equation. Remember, quadratic equation is in this form. Everything is set equal to zero. Our highest power is 2. We have x squared plus bx plus c. First, we're going to set the equation equal to 0. Then we're going to factor. We're going to set each factor equal to 0 and then solve. And then we can check it if we want to. All right, let's take a look at our first one. Number 1, we have our equations already set equal to 0. So we're going to take out our greatest common factor, which in this case happens to be 3x. So I'll factor out a 3x. And I'm left with x minus 9 is equal to 0. So this is where our product property comes in. If I have this times this equals 0, it means one of them must equal to 0. So either 3x is equal to 0 or x minus 9 is equal to 0. So x is either equal to 0 or x is equal to positive of 9, and that's our two answers. Now again, I can check this if we want. We'll just check the first one. So if I know that x is equal to 0, that would give me 3 times 0, which would be 0, minus 27 times 0, which is also 0. That would work, give me a true statement. If x are equal to 9, that would get me 3 times 9 squared is 81, minus 27 times 9 is equal to 0. And again, when we do our math here, that's going to be true as well. That's going to give us 0. All right, let's take a look at the next equation. Now, in our next equation, our 12 is, negative 12 is on the right-hand side, so we're going to first have to add that. So we have x squared plus 7x plus 12 is equal to 0. And we can factor that. Our signs are going to be the same. They're both going to be plus. Factors of 12 that give us 7 are 4 and 3. Now again, this binomial times this binomial gives us 0, so one of them has to equal 0. So I'm going to set them both equal to 0, and x is either equal to negative 4 or x is equal to negative 3. And they are our final answers. Okay, moving along to the next one. In number 3, everything is set equal to 0. My greatest common factor, I noticed that 2 goes in everything, but because of this negative 2, I'm going to factor out a negative 2 instead of a positive 2 because I do want my leading coefficient to be positive. So that's going to give me x squared minus 20x minus 36, and that's going to equal to 0. Okay, so now looking at our next step, we're going to bring that negative 2 down. I'm going to divide into 2 parentheses. Factors of 36, actually, sorry, that's going to be a plus. Factors of 36, it's going to be x minus and x minus. That gives us to 20 is going to be 18 and 2. So now we have to solve it. Now this negative 2 out front, we don't have to worry about because there's not an x attached to it. Remember, we're solving for x. There's no x there, so I don't have to worry about that. So if x is minus 18 is equal to 0 and x minus 2 is equal to 0, so x is equal to 18 or x is equal to 2. Both of those equations, both of those answers will work. Okay, if we keep going, I'm going to add 12x to both sides. And I have 3x to the third plus 12x squared plus 12x is equal to 0. Okay, at this point, I notice that my greatest common factor is not only 3, but it's 3x. So I'm going to take out a 3x, and I get 3x here, and I'm left with x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0. Okay, so I'm going to factor that again, and I have x plus 2 and x plus 2 is equal to 0. So I have 3x and I have x plus 2 and x plus 2. There is an x attached to that, so I need to use that. So I'm going to say 3x is equal to 0. Now x plus 2, I don't need to write that twice. So in the end, I'm going to say because 3x is equal to 0, x must be equal to 0 or x is equal to negative 2. So they're going to be my two solutions for that one. All right, let's take a look at our next equation. Now this one, I don't have a term with just x to the first because this is a perfect square minus a perfect square, our difference of two squares. So remember when I have that, I'm going to have x and x. The square root of 81 is 9, so I'm going to have 9 and 9, and I have 1 plus and 1 minus. That's how that middle outside and inside term zero out. So I have x plus 9 is equal to 0, and x minus 9 is equal to 0. So x is equal to negative 9 or x is equal to positive 9, and they are my two answers. Now, this question here says, is there another way to solve that problem? So let's go back. Now, that's my original. I can add 81 to the other side, and like we've done before, I can take the square root of both sides, and x is going to equal to plus or minus 9, which again is what we have there. All right, let's take a look at our challenge question for the day. It says the product of two consecutive positive integers. So when it's consecutive, it means our first number is going to be x, whatever it is, and our next number would be whatever that is plus 1. So for instance, if x were 5, then the next integer would be 5 plus 1, which would be 6. So it's always x and x plus 1. Now let's see what it says. It says the product. So remember, product means to multiply. Means equal, 19 more than their sum. So if I were to add those together, there's the first number, there's the second number, and then we add 19 more than. So let's see what we have here. That gives me x squared. I'm going to distribute plus x is equal to x plus x gives me 2x, and 1 plus 19 gives me 20. Now I need to bring everything to one side. My x squared right here is positive, so I'm going to subtract 2x. And I'm also going to subtract 20. So before I factor it, x squared minus x minus 20 is equal to 0. I have x and x. My signs are opposite. Factors of 20 that when I subtract, I get 1. So I have 5 here and 4 there. Now again, remember if you were to do that in your x, right? It would be negative 5 and positive 4. So in the end, I have x plus 4 is equal to 0 and x minus 5 is equal to 0. So my answers would be negative 4 and x is equal to positive 5. But now I have to go back and see what it said. It said positive integers. So this x minus 4 is not going to work. So one of my answers is going to be 5. That's the first integer. And then x plus 1, 5 plus 1, would be 6. So there are two integers. Okay, so there are integers. Now we can check that. The product of two consecutive integers are 30 and 19 more than our sum. So I have 5 plus 6 gives me 11 plus 19, that gives me 30. So I know I have my integers correct. Okay, thanks so much for stopping by today. You have a great day.